Welcome in, everyone, to another exciting edition of the Hoxhunt CISO Sandbox. Today, we are going to have a special edition because Cyber Awareness Month is right around the corner, and I wanted to focus in on the concept of cyber awareness with the one, the only David Badanes. David Badanes, welcome to the show again.
Elliot, thanks so much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here, David, because every year there's Cyber Awareness Month, and we oftentimes infuse that month, at least in some of our spoken language around the office, in sports terms. We call it our Super Bowl, our World Cup, and this is that moment where the whole year kind of coalesces into this 4 week bonanza of security awareness trainings. And when we talk about security awareness, I think it might be a little bit of a misnomer because it really is more of something that sits at the intersection of training and human performance and behavior, if you will. So, David, you have a presentation today, and I wanted to kind of first just sort of let you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and how many of these Cyber Awareness Month campaigns you yourself have overseen, and just talk a little bit about that contradiction, as you, if you will, between the word awareness and what we're actually trying to accomplish with these months and with the training that goes beyond these months.
Yeah, Elliot, thanks so much. And it's such a pleasure to be here. My name is David Badanes, and I'm a human risk advisor at Hoxhunt. But previously, I was a security practitioner. I was in charge of driving change management and security awareness and really human risk management across the AES Corporation for the better part of a decade. So you asked how long I've been involved in Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and it has been 10 years. I've tried a bunch of things to really what moves the needle. And I would posit that the best thing you can do is to move cybersecurity awareness throughout the entire year. It's great to focus on it during 1 month, but the best programs are the ones that can make it a year-round thing. In fact, over the last 6 weeks, we just saw a thrilling conclusion to the World Cup here in the United States. And while everything came down to this month, you can believe that the entire year, those athletes, those footballers, they were training, right? They were putting in the repetition, the muscle memory that gave them the ability to succeed during the World Cup itself. And I would say it's the same way that we train our people, right? We really need to focus on them throughout the year, not just at one time. So you asked about security awareness. I would say that the goal is really overall behavior change. What are the things that you can do as an organization, as a company, even within a family, that you can nudge people and give people the incentives and the skills and the training so that they can be better security athletes? And I'm thrilled to share that presentation with you today.
Absolutely. I love that. And so before we move to the next slide, you talk about the World Cup, and absolutely. I mean, people do not become winners just by looking at the rule book or looking at the playbooks, even. You have to know them. But
That's
the way
right.
that people start to win and the way that they are going to emerge victorious on the playing field, and for us, the playing field is going to be the moment that you actually face a real attack, is through those things like repetition. It's through training your instincts. It's through building your muscles. So I think we are absolutely aligned here, and I look forward to learning from you in this presentation today, and I'm sure the audience is as well.
So if you think about this, if you think about that, there's a boy at the free throw line, right? So I love to speak in analogies. I'm a coach. I love to coach kids in youth sports. This was one of my players, right? And I apologies, we're mixing metaphors a little bit from the soccer metaphor to the basketball one. He was at the free throw line at the end of the season. He was standing there and he was terrified. He wasn't sure what to do, and I saw that moment of trepidation on his face. We had practiced how to shoot free throws earlier in the season, right? But maybe we only did it one time, right? So he was sitting there at the moment that it mattered, and he was unsure. And I was worried that he was unsure, that he really didn't know the right thing to do. And frankly, in a metaphor, that could be your security training, showing them once without putting them in the moment where it counts. And what that really means and what that shows is that knowing what to do, knowledge is not the same as behavior. This little boy, he knew how to shoot. He had passed that free throw test. But when the pressure hit, when the moment mattered, he just didn't know what to do. We have the stats out there that 90% of your people do pass security training, right? They get compliance certifications. yet 30% still click some of those phishing links within the first 90 days. And I would posit that we are teaching people to the test or the rule book, as you said, Elliot, so wisely, not giving them repetitions for the game. And so, as we move through, you might have heard versions of this presentation before, right? That you should need to train your users. You need to build security responsibility. But what they don't tell you is if you tell people they have responsibility without capability and accountability, then that's just sort of blame waiting to happen. I can tell this young boy all the time that shooting free throws is his job, but that doesn't actually put the muscle memory into his arms.
Absolutely, the muscle memory. And looking at this guy's face here and looking at the situation, it can kind of feel that way when all of a sudden you realize, uh-oh, this person I'm talking to might not actually be my CFO, or uh-oh, this message I'm looking at, I don't really know what to do with this. Something is up here. I'm just not trained and ready for this thing.
And I will say, I'm thinking about the free throw line as well. That's actually the moment too that I teach my players. Basketball is a frenetic, busy sport. It's the one time when you go to the free throw line when nobody is guarding you, nobody is rushing you. You have the chance to actually sit there, take a breath, take a pause, right? And we should train our people to do the same thing. Work comes in all different angles. We are multimodal with the way that we get emails and IMs and WhatsApp messages. To stop, take a breath, and think before you act is something that I would train anyone to do. And perhaps the best athlete of all is actually Muhammad Ali. And I love this quote of his. And basically, what this gets to is you can either do the easy stuff now with hard stuff later, or the hard stuff now and be a champion later. So you're going to put the work in, right? It's the same as like physical fitness or losing weight or saving for retirement. The investments that you make early pay off at the end. And if you choose not to make those investments in the beginning, you're going to have a really difficult thing at the end. And that's what really I want to get to here is champions are really made in the practice, right? All of those footballers at the World Cup we just saw, they were in training camps long before the World Cup final. Heck, even qualifying for the World Cup. We all tuned in 2 weeks ago to watch that championship game in New York City, but you best believe that all the work happened before that point.
When you're a high performing elite athlete, you know that you're training for some kind of a real special goal. You're training for that championship, you're training for that big payday. When we're talking about cybersecurity training, I wonder if maybe we're talking about something that is, while definitely similar, I wonder if it might be a bit of a different thing, though, too. What would you say to the different security awareness leaders who are trying to motivate people to be these performers on the cyber field?
Yeah, Elliot, it's a great question. I think that you need to recognize that what works for one person might not work for another. Also, I think the concept of repetition might look different for different people based on job role and function. And frankly, if you're coaching a group of World Cuppers, everyone's at pretty much elite level. Whereas if you're running a security awareness program, you might have people on your team, and I say team very broadly, who are very, very good at what they do, maybe as in a CFO role or in a accounting or in an HR function, but just aren't very good at cyber awareness, right? And so it's your job to sort of bring everybody up to the level that can kind of protect their organization. So I would argue it is about consistency is the most important thing.
Which leads to Dwayne the Rock Johnson here.
Yeah, absolutely. He said it best that it's not always about being great, it's about being consistent, right? Showing up is really the most important thing. Those of us who are doing security programming and those of us who are receiving it, there is no ability like availability, right? Of being there and being ready to go. So let me kind of show how we can put this into practice, right? And neuroscience says that habit formation happens by doing things over and over and over again. We've all probably read Malcolm Gladwell's book about 10,000 hours up above my shoulder. People who do that repetition, they're the ones who can become the guitar virtuoso. They can learn foreign languages. You have to put in the work. And that's why whether it's shooting layups, shooting free throws, making penalty kicks, or recognizing phishing attacks, you really need to see a lot of them in order to be ready when the real moment happens. And so we can vary degrees of difficulty. We can customize it to each individual. We can do all the different things that make sense in order for when the real moment hits that you're ready. And speaking of football and Mia Hamm, being there is absolutely most important, right? I'm sure there are days when your team or your kids are just not feeling like getting up for practice or not feeling like wanting to go. And those are the days when actually the best training happens, right? When you are maybe a little bit groggy, maybe you are, your mind is elsewhere, right? Because that's actually the environment in which a cyber attack could happen. And that's when you need to be sort of most on your game. That's when you see you can kind of make the most improvement.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point too. And one of the stories that I've always appreciated was from your former colleague Ryan Boulay when we were speaking together a couple of years back, and he was talking about a time he actually failed a phishing simulation. He was really happy he did because he was groggy. He was really busy. He's the CISO, and even despite knowing all of what he should do and what he should be checking, it was one of those days where he just was thinking of other things. And then the simulation came in, and that was the moment where, even though he might not have felt like he was on his game, he still needed to have those security habits kick in. And that time it didn't happen, and he was glad for it because it helped him kind of remind him that he had to stay on his game.
Yeah, absolutely. And great leaders lead by example, as Ryan has showed that being vulnerable and showing that this, showing why it happened to you and using it as a teaching point that you can show and coach others. Just a great example there. So let's kind of get into the details here about one thing that we're seeing. And I'll use this analogy to say that understanding new techniques, right? So if I was the coach of a World Cup football team and I had the same defensive game plan based on every team, that would not be successful. You need to study what the adversary is doing. Maybe they run two strikers at the top, right? Maybe they're really good at headers, like Erling Haaland. Maybe they really are focusing on their corner kick game. I say that because we really need to know what cyber attackers are doing in order to tune our defenses appropriately. And there's no better way of doing that than to read the phishing trends report that Hoxhunt puts out. And I'm going to highlight a few things that we see from the phishing trends report. So one thing we're seeing on the rise are calendar invite attacks. These things are incredibly difficult to defend against because the way calendar invites in Outlook, they just kind of automatically drop into your calendar. And for some of our senior executives, maybe they have somebody actually managing their calendar for them. So those get dropped in. And when you delete or decline them, depending on your settings, some of them actually might stay there. And then they come up to the day when that happens, and there's a link in there for a Teams message, and they might join that, right? So these are really difficult, and we're seeing an incredible spike in them. You see an example there on the screen. These are things that I would caution you to make sure that your people know about. And you can even, from an admin, customize your settings to make sure that they're hard deleted in a certain way. So as a security leader, you can use that hard delete action. You can use some of the customization options in Microsoft Defender to do that hard delete, and you can have certain remediation tools. You also can control external organizations, the way that they send you calendar messages, and control which domains are able to send and the like. And then, frankly, what I would argue is one of the more important things to do is to strengthen user awareness. Make sure people know about these types of attacks. Make sure you know, hey, watch out for that 6'6" striker up at the top line who's going to try to head in that goal. Let's be prepared when he comes through the box, right? So having people see that and know that and be ready for when it does come.
Yeah, this is a great point too, because considering this year in 2026, we have seen a change in the threat landscape, and this is a perfect example of that. It's a perfect example of using the October Awareness Month as an opportunity to train people on the latest threats, the ones they're actually seeing, the relevant ones. Will have just published a couple weeks back a pretty amazing finding about World Cup phishing attacks that have surged 500% this year compared to where those type of attacks were at in early April through February. So these are attacks that people wouldn't have seen normally, but now they might have been part of their daily inbox routines is going in and seeing these attacks. And if they don't know that these are actual fish, they might be clicking on them and participating in them. So you got to show people things that is relevant to them, and it's going to make it feel more important to them also.
Absolutely. Well said, Elliot. So what can you say to your team? I talked about that guy on the free throw line. Let's pause. Let's take a breath before interacting with any message, especially an unexpected invite. Maybe you can verify through another channel. Was I expecting this meeting invite? You can report it. Hopefully, you have settings in place that you can report the calendar invite just the same way you would report an email. And then having those actions that delete versus decline. Understand the difference. What does it mean to delete a calendar invite? What does it mean to simply decline a calendar invite? And then ultimately, know that calendar invites in Outlook, they're basically email, right? So know that you should treat them just the same as you would a malicious email. And Hoxhunt, we're constantly searching through the threat landscape to identify what the latest trends are, right? And then we are putting those back into practice of training our people to be ready for them, and giving that people customized simulations based on their ability, and for real fish that come through, also providing that user feedback right there that yes, this was a phishing message, or we believe with a high degree of certainty that it was a authentic fish, and thank you for reporting it.
Right. And for those of the audience who are not using Hawkshunt, how would you replicate this kind of workflow if you didn't have the platform that did this automatically for you?
Well, obviously, it makes it a lot easier to use Hoxhunt in this scenario. But if you didn't, one thing I think is that you can take a look at the threat intelligence out there, rewrite trainings, create your own fish. You can customize that to what your users are seeing, and then sort of use that to continually adapt your program.
Yeah, that sounds good. And how about the threat feed? Are you able to kind of dip into your threat feed to find some good examples of what your users are seeing?
If you can, you can look through your abuse mailbox and look at what people are reporting, understanding what's getting through your secure email gateway, and then sort of repurposing those to get a sense of what the threat landscape looks like. So I think we've come to this conclusion that simply doing one practice one time a year is not championship ready, right? And so what we would like to do is to train our people so that they are ready when the moment happens. Because unlike a World Cup final or a NBA championship, the games are not scheduled, right? The games are going to happen at a moment of the cyber adversaries choosing. So let's talk about the idea of feedback, right? Any good athlete or any person needs feedback, whether it's in their job or in their relationships. Feedback needs to be specific. It needs to be measurable. It needs to have some sort of course correction. So if I were to say at the end of the year, hey, Henry, you missed 60% of your free throws. Got to do better, man. Got to do better. That's not very good, right? Good feedback is in the moment, maybe having a little bit of a breath, right? Maybe during the car ride home or other, but to actually give them sort of that, hey, we noticed this. We're going to put it into practice at the next practice tomorrow. Your technique, I noticed that your left foot was a little bit further forward than your right foot. We need to kind of work on that and sort of have more symmetry with your body when you're going up for a shot, right? That's specific. We're going to work on it together. Encouragement. That's what good feedback looks like.
Critical point about the nature of good and bad feedback.
And then let's think about what an actual attack, right? So I think this is the same in the cyber world, that you can see that feedback of getting a message and reporting it. And this is really cool for a user to see, right? Because then they understand that they help the organization in a specific way. So the parallels are certainly there. So how does this look, right? That's the place where people learn, is when they get that user feedback and for a message, and then they can learn, and it also flows into our Hoxhunt engine. And if you're using Hoxhunt, then you can be powered by AI to really sort of improve your overall performance of your simulation program as well as your users, right? It's a continuous security training in action. You have real threats coming in that are analyzed and then sort of put back into the wild to be part of your simulation library. And by the way, this is happening across all customer environments. So if you're a smaller organization, you're actually getting the benefit of all those different mailboxes across the globe. So let's talk about what actually works in athletic development. We've been talking about different techniques, but let me put it on one slide for everybody to see. So what you need to do is that continued varied practice. You need to have a robust fishing program that happens at different times of day, different modalities, getting people on their Outlook, on their mobile, different times. And you need to give them that feedback. We talked about the importance of feedback. Not just delayed reports, not just something at the end of the month saying, thank you, you reported 10 fish. You really need to be adaptive difficulty. I showed that picture of how different types of free throw shooting, different types of layups really train to the user. Maybe, it's a rec basketball team and you have people of all different skill levels, like I maybe did this year. And you're dealing with some kids who have never played before and some kids who have done a lot of years of AAU already. You need to be ready to give them customized training that meets them where they are. And then, frankly, you need to measure, right? You need to see real behavioral metrics and understand what you can improve on. And this is not completion rates, this is not click rates, in my opinion. And what does that look like? We believe that gamification is actually the best way to do it, right? When people are rewarded. I give out at my basketball practices stickers, I give out stars, I give out little rubber ducks for practice of the day, champion of the day, and then hard hats actually that are the person who's kind of that lunch pail mentality. I think this works in a corporate setting. It might take a little bit of, people might be reluctant to it at first, but people dive in 100%. Like I can speak from having seen this not only when I was director of cyber awareness at AES, but also across tons of other clients. People get engaged. They love this. People want to compete for stars. They want to challenge, see where they are on the leaderboard. Some people that you would never ever expect to be like this they just go all in. And I think it's absolutely cool to see. And I think this is one of the secret sauces of a good phishing and phishing awareness program is that people like to compete.
Yeah, and I think this is a really important lesson too for the security awareness month coming up. If you have a capability, whether you're a Hoxhunt user or not, what we keep on finding time and time again is that users really enjoy the competitive aspect of a security awareness initiative. They seem to really enjoy having a leaderboard. They like to compete with each other, they like to compete by geography, they like to compete by department. So I think this is a really important thing to kind of get into is that when we're making that comparison between sports training and between cybersecurity awareness training, you actually can insert a competitive element into security awareness training. And this has been tried and true. This is based on game behavioral design. We had the previous webinar just back in June with Yukai Chow, was the pioneer of gamification and game design and behavior design. And this is all about getting people to kind of feel activated to succeed. And you challenge them at their level and you challenge them to get to a certain point where they feel like they are actually working kind of with their own team, but also competing with their own team to show that they're actually better than they are, to have a little bit of bragging rights too.
And you do have to put the work in. Absolutely, right? The only place that success comes before work is in the dictionary. Yeah, you have to absolutely put the work in. Vince Lombardi, the greatest, champion, winner of the first two Super Bowls, he knew this, right? And this is true for our programs, right? So don't think that you're going to get instant results in whatever you do. You do need to put the work in as an organization to sort of make that culture change. So what happens? What happens next, right? So when that moment hits, right, that you have that basketball there, you got an empty gym. I think really about what are the resources that an organization needs to put forward. And I think about what the organizational commitment can look like as you think about your company, your organization, across any platform, any tool, you do need to have that executive buy-in. You need to have tone from the top that this is a key part of our program. This is aligned to our mission. This is aligned to our values. And maybe, even as you talked about with that CISO, Ryan, that you have somebody who is willing to show that this matters and this matters to me, and that, I am somebody who needs to learn too, right? That's a real executive buy-in, and frankly, a little bit of cultural shift as well. You need to make sure that you're putting your money where your mouth is, that you're focused on, putting time, people time, as well as resources and software costs with it as well. And that this is about a culture shift, right? And I would argue that it's much more about the carrot than the stick, right? And celebrating those wins, honoring those people, collecting those stars. And then finally, as I said with Vince Lombardi, that there's patience, right? This is Rome wasn't built in a day, so you need to continually be ready that the results could take a little bit of time, right? But because what you're trying to do is shift a mindset of um, for cybersecurity. So
Also, so if results might take more than 3 to 6 weeks, I just sort of assumed that because Cyber Awareness Month is 1 month a year, that there's only phishing attacks during October. Are you telling me, David, breaking news, that there are phishing attacks and people need to be trained after October?
absolutely, yeah, this doesn't stop. Yeah, you have to kind of be continually ready. So there's two ways of going about it, right? You can just get the annual certificate, right? Do your cybersecurity awareness training. Um, but you know that that's not going to work, right? And that's why you're here listening to this presentation. Um, what you could do instead is actually be ready and train your users. And then the boy is at the free throw line, he's there and he's shooting, and you have the confidence that your employee is going to report that phishing message and make that bucket. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. I think that all of your employees are going to have that moment where they are on the free throw line. And if you've trained them appropriately, I believe that they are going to succeed, right? And you'll have forever kind of a keepsake memento there of having done that. Um, this is really important, and I think that all of us as security awareness leaders can bring the power to others to know the right thing to do, and then more importantly, actually do that through our behavior change.
Well said and well presented, David. Really appreciate this, and I think that everybody in the audience appreciates this too. And as a way of us showing our appreciation to you in the audience, we at Hoxhunt have developed this year's Cyber Awareness Month Toolkit, which is based upon this entire premise that cyber is a team sport. And this year we're going to have 4 weeks of content, of posters, of messages, of videos, of stickers that you can download and use for your Cyber Awareness Month campaigns. And David, I really appreciate you kind of setting the vibe here that we have spent months trying to set with this year's toolkit. It was a huge success, hugely appreciated last year. I think we've taken it up a notch, and I think a lot of that is due to some of the thought leadership that you've put forth this year in your talks around the world about this exact topic as you've discussed it today. So appreciate that, and we appreciate you, audience. There will be links for you to get on the wait list to download. That'll be available on August 17th, but you can sign up for it now and you can get it before then.
Elliot, thank you so much. Look, nobody wins the World Cup on talent alone. It's the reps in the background that nobody sees. So I encourage all of you guys to build that into your security programs, and you won't need to be sitting there hoping that people will get it right because they'll already know how to do it. It's been great being with you here today.
Thank you. Happy Cyber Awareness Month, everybody, and happy August and September before then.